I just have is this on? A follow-up for Parker. You got a lot of applause about the income tax, or at least your approach up until the point you said income tax. But it's unconstitutional, so how would you deal with that?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you brought it up. There's a lot of talk about implementing a state income tax, whether or not it's constitutional, or what the courts have said about it, or, oh, maybe it's constitutional, but only if we have a statewide ballot measure or something. So that's why I looked up the Constitution earlier today. And what it says is that property in the same class has to be taxed at the same rate for everybody. So if you like unfair taxes, good news, because if we do implement an income tax, it'll have to be flat rate. It can't be graduated. If we have bracket income tax where the like income over $200,000 or something, which has been proposed at a certain time, that will probably be found unconstitutional, but a flat rate income tax, which will still be a heck of a lot less regressive than what we have now, is not unconstitutional.
Anyone else?
Should I share a response to that?
Sure, go ahead.
Our Supreme Court has actually said that having a state income tax is unconstitutional. It can only be implemented if it's voter approved. Now, I know Seattle is taking some steps in getting creative, but what that's going to happen is it's going to be caught in litigation for anywhere to the next 5 to 7 years. So here's the question. Do we want to have policy that really is not about solving problems, but about creating litigation? And that's what's going to happen. So the reality of the situation is that we cannot have a state income tax in this state unless it's voter approved. So any other conversation about how the Democrats are going to do this, and this is what it means, is simply a scare tactic, because it's not reality. So let's talk about what is realistic. And what is realistic in the state, and what is going on in our state, is that we're not governing. We have 3 lawsuits out there. We have our Supreme Court telling our legislators that they're not fully funding education. We have another lawsuit saying we're not taking care of our mentally ill. We have a 3rd lawsuit about our foster care system. And you know what they have in common? Is that it impacts the most vulnerable in our state. Our children, the mentally ill, and the foster care system. This is not governing. And we just simply have to do better. And a lot of that means we have to raise revenue, because we cannot get something for free. We actually fund education at the 44th level in the country. But our return on that, our schools are rated in the 20th. So we are using the money we do have effectively, but we are such an innovative, amazing state. Look at all the great companies that come out of here. We can do better. We need to be in the top 10. We, in the state of Washington, need to be leaders for the future. Really be taking leadership in clean energy, in new technologies, and we can get there. But this means we have to invest in our community, and we have to invest in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, more about the income tax. Closer. Again, I'd like to see us live within our means. Whatever change in this tax structure involves, I'd like to see if there is an increase in one kind of tax, whatever it is, and I would also be concerned that the income tax is going to be tied up in litigation for a long time. That is not the first place to go. I think some have suggested capital gains tax. To some people, capital gain tax is a form of income tax. They've worked hard for that money, and why should it be taxed at a higher rate than it is currently? So that's a concern there's political debate on that subject. So as I said before, it's complicated, and there are so many factors involved, and what's good for business, and we have to continue to grow our businesses to provide jobs. That's crucial. And so I want to find a business-friendly environment. I think that is best done with good, deep, multi-party conversations. Find out what the Democrats think, find out what the Republicans think, find out what the Libertarians think, find out what everybody else thinks. try to come to the best possible solution with all of those components of a broad conversation. I think we get into trouble when 51% of the body, either House or Senate or whatever, tries to get something through without really trying to work to a compromise. We're seeing that in Washington, D.C. Bipartisan is becoming a dirty word for the Republicans right now, because they're threatening, if you don't get this passed in the Senate, we're going to have to be bipartisan. Well, I'd like to see bipartisan, multi-partisan be a good word.
I think one of the problems we have right now is we need wealth creation, not wealth redistribution. We already spend a significant amount on tax. I ran across an article just the other day, and if you contact me, I can get it to you. We pay in Washington State about 39 different taxes. If you add up what you are spending right now, federal, state, local, sales tax, gas tax, all of these different taxes, you're looking at between 40 and 50% of your income. Over the course of my last few runs, the conversation has been changing. I think we're reaching a tipping point. We need to be looking at other solutions. For example, in the last budget, there was the offer, there was a part of the budget was a B&O tax deduction. Well, 3 years ago, we gave Boeing a B&O tax deduction. We shifted the burden onto everyone else to provide, the small businesses and individuals, to amply provide education. Well, we had the opportunity to extend that B&O tax deduction to other manufacturers, smaller, in our state. Well, there were 23 Democrats that got Inslee to veto that. That's the kind of opposition against providing the middle and smaller businesses that we need to stop. We have crony capitalism in this country right now, and it doesn't see a party. It's both. If you go up high enough, the people controlling the strings on both sides of the party, that's where the problem is. And frankly, I've seen it. That's what I'm running against. And forgive me, I mean, I'm up here in front of you, I get a little tongue-tied every once in a while. Feel free to give me a call. You can look at my website. I go into a little more detail on these issues. They're very sophisticated, complex issues, hard to put into a talking point, but I'd be more than happy to talk to you on a one-on-one basis. Thank you so much.
I don't like to talk about taxes all night, but I am going to ask a different question. So I just watched the national news right before I came here, and it doesn't matter what the issue was. You got one side spinning a reality and the other side spinning a reality. Our federal government is completely broken, in my opinion. I mean, absolutely broken, which really puts a lot of pressure and a responsibility on local government. But what I see, in full disclosure, I am running for office. But what I see is that brokenness and that completely insane partisan rudeness, disrespect filtering down into our level. What I'd like to know is what will you do to recognize that whether you're Democrat, Republican, or Independent, that you share some value, you have respect, you have regard for people with different opinions.
I'd love to answer that first, if that's okay? Sure. That's a big part
Oh,
of
and by the way, I'm the timer. Take all the time you want.
Oh, perfect.
Kitty.
Sir, you hit the nail on the head for why I'm running. One of the things I do, I'm a paralegal. I represent homeowners in foreclosure. When we had the recession, a lot of folks were told to stop making the payments, so on and so forth, find themselves in foreclosure. I have the bank on one side, and you might get, I don't have any huge love for the big banks, and I've got the homeowners on the other side. And my job is to listen to both sides, and at the end of the day, we get a deal. Now, at the end of the day, does that mean that they're cracking champagne bottles? No. We compromise. And where does that compromise start? That compromise starts by listening and by really identifying what areas do we agree on, what areas do we disagree on. One of the problems I see in our country right now, and frankly it scares me, and it's one of the reasons I'm running, is there's such division and animosity. Kennedy said, when nonviolent revolution is made impossible, violent revolution is inevitable. And we have a lack of leadership in our country right now. We have a leadership on both sides that is exploiting that division. Now, do I agree with the Democrats on all issues? Obviously not. I'm not a Democrat. Do I agree with the Republicans on all issues? Obviously not. Do I agree with my own party? Obviously not. The reality is we need to listen to all the parties. At the end of the day, we all have the same things in common. We all want food on the table, a roof over our heads, and a future for our children. And we need to put that front and center and stop with the partisan rhetoric, then the bickering. And it needs to start now. And one of the things that we need to do, even if I was sitting out there, we need to expect more out of our leadership. And we need to expect more out of ourselves. Because at the end of the day, we cannot blame the government. We can't blame our neighbor. The blame lies right here with us because we didn't get involved and we didn't participate. So thank you for that question, and I think we all need to be the change that we wish to see. Thank you.
Anyone else want to answer that?
Yes, I thank you for the question. And as I tried to say in a previous segment, I am trying to be, I'm welcoming the support of both sides of the aisle. And I think there needs to be a conversation on both sides of the aisle and from other minor parties, including libertarians. Everybody has a useful point of view and some points worth talking about. There are things that have been put into gear in the past by one party that has a bare majority, or even a significant majority. And there needs to be course corrections along the way. I've sailed a number of boats, and so I use course correction because it's really important. You can find a destination, you can set your course, but there's got to be corrections along the way. And that's best done with conversations with people from opposing viewpoints. And many of the, as you indicate, the hyper-partisan one side or the hyper-partisan other side, they paint the other side as really problematic, and they don't trust the other side. Well, I think coming closer to the center, there is more conversation back and forth across. I did talk to somebody who's been very involved in the healthcare committee in the Senate, and she is a Republican, Ann Rivers. She was questioned about how can you be a Republican in this era, and she responded, well, I want to keep this Washington from becoming like the other Washington. And she got a big round of applause, and that changed the whole conversation at that town hall meeting. Anyway, I want to keep this Washington with good bipartisan conversations, which we have had, which has resulted in the budget that we have. It's not perfect, and it's painful for many people in this community, but it's a step toward the course correction that we need.
Thanks, Richard. I'm a sailor too, and I often like to think of things in politics, course corrections, and also how all the different forces in politics and in many other aspects of life are kind of like the wind or the current or various other forces that act on the boat, and it's all a balancing act to try to move in the right directions. I appreciate that. If you told me 5 years ago that in the year 2016 we would have a presidential election where the candidates would refuse to shake hands at the debate, or that I would know people who literally do not talk to some of their family members because of who they voted for, you would have called me crazy. And you would have been right. reached a state of divide that has become a distraction from any kind of constructive discussion about policy. It's really sad, but it's really true. I started this campaign by walking door to door in the district to gather signatures to get on the ballot. I'm the only one who gathered signatures to get on the ballot instead of paying a big fee. I continue to do that, and I continue to find that people are overwhelmingly frustrated with the divide. I talk to a lot of people who are really conservative, a lot of people who are really liberal. But we've all lost faith with the parties. And the ground is falling out from underneath them. And it makes sense that that's happening because they've gotten so far apart and they're leaving us behind. A really good example of how rhetoric seems to be coming in as more important than actual good logic or good policy is an article that I saw about in the Seattle Times that I saw about the new minimum wage in Seattle. It's $15 an hour, and they've started to ramp it up. And there was an article that came out that was done by a completely nonpartisan group of professors at UW that said some objective facts about how the new minimum wage is actually hurting some workers because their hours have been cut, and when you did the math, they're actually earning less money. And this was immediately attacked from the left, including from the Governor Jay Inslee, and he attacked it as being not a good study before he even read it. And not to be a personal attack on him, but it's an attack on partisanship in general. And to look at a study like that, to agree with the idea behind the minimum wage, to really care for workers, but to be able to legislate based on facts and logic and evidence is something that I will do as your senator. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. It's actually a very important one. So this is my first time running for office. I have never sought elected office before. What I have done for the last 17 years as a prosecutor in King County is bring diverse groups together in order to solve problems. I run a therapeutic courts. I run a mental health court, veterans court, and a diversion program. I created a lot of these programs. And the way I went about doing that is making sure that I had law enforcement at the table, I had defense attorneys on the table, we had prosecutors on the table, we had mental health experts on the table, we had people in the jail and community members on the table. And that's how we were able to develop and run these successful programs, because that is what I have been doing for the last 17 years right here in King County. And those are the skills that I want to bring to work for us in Olympia, because I have a track record of doing that. And it goes back to making sure that we're focused on doing what's right. We're focused on making sure we're listening to everyone, and we're focused on making sure we're governing. And that's how you get past all the partisan politics, is by having good policies that make sense, that reflect the values of the residents of our district, and we make sure we are building our community up and building that middle class. Thank you.
I'm going to do, so hold on to those questions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put out a word, and I'd like to give you all about 2 minutes to tell us a little bit about it, okay? I'd like to start with affordable housing. I'll give you a couple of minutes to think, no Jeopardy music. Who would like to start on affordable housing? Go ahead.
It's interesting that we're talking about affordable housing. Housing is kind of in my wheelhouse. As I mentioned, that I got involved in politics as a consequence of the foreclosure situation in the mortgage-backed security Ponzi scheme, I would call it. And I first testified in 2011 in Olympia and was trying to let these folks know we've got a real problem coming here. We've had 640,000 foreclosures in Washington State. And that's an old statistic, that's a 2-year-old statistic. That's 640,000 families that have lost their homes. What happens when people lose their homes that they've owned? They move into the rental market. And what happens with rents? Rents go up. So we have a combination of problems. I'm not going to say that the foreclosure situation is the only contributing factor. We also have huge growth that we haven't planned for very well, and we seem to be in denial about it. We are going to continue to grow, so we need to manage that smartly. The housing problem is not necessarily a homelessness problem. It's an inventory problem. We have a lack of inventory. The average cost of a house in Kirkland is $700,000. Gross monthly income, double income, $94,000. At 31% being affordable, 31% of your gross monthly making an affordable payment, folks cannot afford these homes. My daughter just recently moved into an apartment. It cost her $5,000 first last month and a deposit. Now, is that the landlord's fault? No. The landlord owns the property and now is facing increase in property taxes. Someone has to absorb that. Whose fault is this? Mismanagement in Olympia. They had the opportunity to see what was coming down the pipe. We had too big to fail corporations gutting, pillaging our communities, and now we are dealing with the repercussions. So what do we need to do? Well, in my opinion, as I talk to builders, we need to build more. We are in a state of emergency. We need to relax some of the regulations that are inhibiting building. For example, a 180-day approval process on new development should not be drug out to 2 years. If I am elected, I will sponsor legislation that if the jurisdiction cannot approve within 180 days, it's automatic approval. We need more housing. And that is what's going to, increasing the inventory will naturally drive prices down. And that's one of the contributing factors, mind you. Thank you. Sorry, I see my time.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Housing around here is really expensive. We all know that. That's probably why I was brought up. I agree that we need a lot more housing. I am not generally a huge fan of policies that artificially lower the cost of housing unless it's on a clearly temporary basis. There's been a lot of talk about rent control in Seattle, and there's been some talk about extending it to other areas that are also affected by extremely high rising property and housing costs. And I think that to allow people who currently live there to stay there is really important. We don't want to be forcing people out. That's just awful. And when they've lived somewhere their entire life, they should be allowed to continue living there, and they shouldn't be forced out because they can no longer afford it. But what we should not do is artificially create a system where some of the housing is at a very low rate and the rest of it is at a skyrocketing market rate. Because that's unfair, and it just pushes the market to other places. It pushes the market to who can get in using whatever the ways are to get into the cheap housing, and then there's a huge demand there, instead of having demand actually determine the price. So there's not an easy fix to this. I think one fix we can do is to accelerate approval on building projects. I agree with that, although we need to make sure that it's not at the expense of environmental regulations. I also think we can help out big time by hopefully not increasing and perhaps even reducing some of the major property taxes, especially around in this area. I think we should be proud that there's so much growth here, because it's great that everyone wants to come and live here. But we need to deal with the fact that a bigger demand for housing causes prices to rise. And we should encourage development that produces a lot of housing instead of just a few houses. But there's no easy answer. And I look forward to having a lot more conversations about how to fix this situation. Thanks.
Affordability is a huge issue in our district. I already gave you the example of my daughter's friend who had to move out. I also have a very good friend of mine who has lived in this district for over 40 years. Her and her husband built their house, and it's a very modest house, years ago. And now they have all of these million-dollar homes popping up all around them. They can't afford the taxes on their home. And it is a travesty when people on fixed incomes of families that are starting cannot afford to buy homes. So I think the property tax is definitely something that has to be addressed, because it is something that keeps people from continuing to stay in their home. But as a lot of other people have pointed out, this is a very complex issue. There are multiple things we need to be looking at. We need to be looking at high-density areas. We need to make sure that if people are looking at more construction, we have to make sure we're protecting our environment. Growth has to be managed. And affordability goes hand in hand with things we're doing in terms of how are we paying our teachers. Can our teachers afford to live in the area in which they teach? Can our firefighters do that? And if they can't, guess what they're contributing to? They're contributing to our transportation issue. So these are issues that are extremely interconnected, and these are issues that need elected officials who are going to rely on data, are going to rely on science, and making sure that they have a plan for the future. And it goes back to making sure that we are governing for the future and not running from one election cycle to the next. Thank you.
I think the others up here have given some very good comments on the subject. It's a difficult issue that doesn't have an easy solution. We are certainly not the only urban area that's experienced this. And I was at a meeting in San Francisco in early 2000s. I looked at the prices down there, and that encouraged me to come up here and help my daughter buy a house on Goat Hill, north of Kirkland, because it looked very reasonable compared to the San Francisco prices. My daughter has taught high school biology. She's a teacher. Her husband was a contract worker at Microsoft for many years. He didn't get any of the stock options that we mentioned earlier. And he had to be off 100 days every year, so he wasn't treated like an employee at Microsoft. So I'm aware of those and many other people. And the people that I've met outdoor belling, I talked to one woman who said, well, there's a man down the street who just can't afford his taxes. He's afraid he's going to have to move. I know this is an issue, and I'm concerned about it. I am proud to say that I've received the endorsement of the local realtors, and I've talked to them closely about their issues, and there does need to be more affordable housing. I've talked to the home builders, and I realize what their issues are and how they need to have reasonable regulations on their industry, and so that there can be more supply and help the supply and demand issue. Huge issues need much thought, conversation, debate in Olympia and in local areas to see where things go. All of these problems can't be solved in Olympia and shouldn't be solved in Olympia. A lot of these problems need to be addressed locally with growth management plans, with conversations between the local communities and the state government.
Anything from the task force? Do you have anything you want to pop in there?
Pardon?
Do you have anything you want to pop in there with affordable housing?
No.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Dennis Villeneuve, top 36 years, last 33 years at Redmond High School. My question is about education. So the legislature suspended the teacher cost of living adjustments. I didn't get any money extra for over 6 years. They're starting to remedy that. They suspended the class size initiative. It's still suspended. As you stated, we're in the 40s in spending per pupil, and we're in the 40s in class size. We are high-performing schools. We do a great job. None of the new teachers at Redmond can afford to live near the high school. They have to live in Monroe and Snoqualmie and wherever. But my question is not about taxes and how to pay for the schools, but if you're elected, then what are you going to do to improve our schools, assuming that we can figure out some kind of spending plan? What are you going to actually do to improve the schools in, say, Washington? Because, frankly, we have one of the best economies in the United States and our state, and it's embarrassing the quality and state of our education. Paramount duty of the state, fund education. Clary said so.
Thank you for that question, and thank you so much for being a teacher and dedicating your life to our youth. A public education system is the foundation of our democracy. It really is the place where we give every single child the same equal opportunity to succeed. And at any time when we are not fully funding education, we are literally robbing our children of their future, and that is wrong. We are fortunate to have wonderful schools, but they can be so much better. And the way it starts is by making sure that we are paying our teachers an appropriate wage. Now, my daughter Isha went to Einstein Elementary School, and they had a principal change every 2 years because that principal was commuting an hour each way to get to school. That's not the way we want to treat our teachers. We were fortunate that with my son, his teacher could afford to live across the street from us. And you know, that sense of community that comes from having teachers live in your district is amazing. He actually got sick on Valentine's Day when he was in elementary school. And that evening, his teacher walked across the street with his box of Valentine's Day box with all his treats and cards from all his elementary school friends. That was wonderful. I'm always going to remember that. He's always going to remember that. That's what our teachers do. They are caring, they are giving, and they are spending way too much out of their own pocket to our schools. And education is something that I'm extremely passionate about, because that is exactly how we make sure our next generation are the leaders that we need in this country. So that is definitely going to be a priority of mine, to make sure that we are fully funding education. And when I say fully funding, I mean making sure that each child has a plan for success. Thank you.
Thanks, Maka. I agree that education should be a top priority for our legislature, and astonishingly, it hasn't been. I think that it would be really great to give schools all the money and all the resources that they could ever hope for, and maybe one day we'll get there. The least we can do is give them a consistent plan for funding our schools, because it keeps changing every couple of years. And that alone is causing a lot of teachers and administrators to leave their jobs. We need to attract the best teachers to Washington State, and we can't do that if we're not paying our teachers well, paying them well enough to live near their schools, and we also can't do it if we can't guarantee them job security. There are a lot of great special programs that are funded and a lot that aren't. And unfortunately, it keeps changing. So if you're called in to be a behavior analyst and you work with kids with autism, or you work with another kind of special need child, you don't know if your program is still going to be there in a couple of years. And that alone is a travesty, because it prevents a lot of really great professionals to come in and work with kids. Everybody who's ever been to school, which I assume is everybody here, knows that the teacher makes or breaks the education. And so attracting the great teachers to come and work in our schools is a way to make them great schools. I work at a private school. I used to teach at Bishop Blanchette High School in Seattle, but now I work at a little tiny private school up in Woodinville. And we have really, really great outcomes. It's a very unusual school. We have tiny class sizes. Many would call it a progressive or an alternative kind of education. We have very, very small class sizes. I don't think I've ever heard of one over 10. And we have really wonderful outcomes. And the kids really adore it. They like what they're doing, and they come out with a lot more self-esteem than I've seen from seniors at other schools. The astonishing thing is, our tuition is less than $14,000 a year. We could do this in public schools. And there are a lot of impediments to making changes to the way we educate our kids. There are forces at work. And I love unions, but unfortunately teachers' unions are sometimes one of them, that prevent any change at all on principle just because it may threaten them. So there are a lot of things we can do for education. And it would be great to increase funding, but we don't necessarily even have to do that. We could start now.